Hello everyone, Jez here. I was in a group the other day where I shared a bit about my personal story around estrangement with my parents and my son. And somebody commented on the video and made a whole series of assumptions about me, what my intentions were, what kind of child and parent I must have been. The interesting thing was that they had absolutely no idea what the real story was. Now, that didn't upset me in the way that it might have done years ago, but it did remind me of something really important. Our brains are incredible assumption making machines. And those assumptions don't just sit there quietly in the background. They can trigger real stress responses in the body, even when nothing dangerous is actually happening around us. So today I want to show you what happens inside your brain and how a simple assumption can create a full-on emotional storm. Because when you understand what your brain is doing, you can stop believing every thought you have is actually the truth. So I'm just going to share a slide. And today we're talking about the assumption spiral. So let's look at this. Now, this happens incredibly fast. So fast that most people think they're just reacting, but actually there's a sequence going on. So step one is the trigger. Something usually quite small, something happens. Maybe someone doesn't reply to a message. Maybe the tone of somebody's voice changes. And right now, that event is just information, just words, just sound. Your brain hasn't decided what it means yet. But then something quite fascinating happens. Your reticular activating system, your RAS, wakes up. That's a part of your brain that acts like a radar. It's like a radar system. It's scanning the world around you all the time, asking one question: what should I pay attention to? And when the trigger happens, that radar locks onto it. Then it starts searching your past experiences, looking for similar moments. So just, have we felt like something like this before? And if you've experienced rejection in the past, then your radar is already tuned to look for signs of rejection. If you've experienced criticism, then your radar quickly spots criticism, and so on, because it's familiar. Then the next part of the brain gets involved, the amygdala. Now, this is your brain's threat detector. Its job is survival. Thousands of years ago, it helped humans avoid predators, but today it reacts just as strongly to social threats, embarrassment, rejection, conflict. If the amygdala thinks something might be dangerous, then it pushes the alarm button, and now your whole body joins in. Your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, your muscles tense. You're going into that fight and flight response, survival response. You might even feel tightening in the chest. And then the final part kicks in, the basal ganglia. This is your brain's habit center. So if you've reacted to situations like this many times before, your brain recognizes the pattern and it says, oh wow, we know this script. So it runs the usual reaction. Maybe you withdraw, maybe you over-explain, maybe you panic, maybe you shut down. And it feels like rejection just happened automatically. Because neurologically, it did. All of that can happen in seconds. One small assumption and your whole body thinks it's under threat. I felt this very clearly in my own life. There have been times when my son wouldn't respond to a message, and immediately my brain would go into a story. Maybe he thinks I've let him down, and my chest would become tight, my breathing would become more shallow. But what was actually happening was that my brain was responding to a story I had created, not a fact. And this sequence we go through leads to a second part, the spiral. Because once that alarm bell starts, your mind doesn't stop there. It starts building a whole story. So let's look at this. Everything happening here is happening inside your mind. It usually starts with a simple thought, something like, they didn't reply to my message. Then the second step happens. Your brain fills in the gaps. You make assumptions. They must think I'm being needy. Then your insecurities join in. See, I always mess things up in relationships. Then the threat stories build. They probably don't want to talk to me anymore. They're done with me. And now the body responds. Your anxiety escalates. So your heart starts to race, starts to pound. Your chest gets tight. You can't sleep. And the spiral just loops. Each thought feeds the next one, round and round, until one small moment has turned into a full emotional crisis. And the person you're worried about might not even know any of this is happening. I remember lying awake one night thinking, maybe my son thinks I'm unreliable. And my mind built an entire story of rejection around that. But the reality, he was just busy, not judging me, not rejecting me, just living his life. Our thoughts can create real panic, but they're not always telling the truth. So instead of trying to stop your thoughts, try questioning them. If you feel the spiral start, then pause and ask yourself these 3 questions. First, what assumption is running right now? And you can usually spot this. It normally starts with something like, they think XYZ. Then the second question, what past experiences make this assumption feel true? Because often the brain is reacting to something old, not something that's happening now. And then the third question, what else could this situation mean? Maybe they aren't ready to speak to you. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe nothing is wrong at all. When you start asking those questions, you interrupt the spiral. You create space between the thought and the reaction. So, assumptions from your past can control your present. But when you start questioning those assumptions, your mind becomes calmer and your body becomes calmer. So I'm curious, what assumption do you notice showing up most often in your life? Just drop it in the comments. Today, take care of yourself and remember, question the assumptions. Thank you.